How long does the mastering process typically take? This is a really common question, and although there's no set answer to it, I'm going to give you a few things to consider just to give you a rough idea. So first, let's clarify the difference between actually sitting down and mastering a song and then the process of working with a mastering engineer, which involves sending your files off, getting feedback, maybe tweaking your mix, and then getting your masters back and maybe even doing some revisions on those. It's really important to consider that even though mastering a song might only take an hour or two, the process that I just mentioned might take days or even weeks depending on how busy your mastering engineer is. So mastering a song, the process typically takes anywhere from 1 to 2 hours, but it varies a lot depending on the mix, how much processing you need and the type of files you need at the end. You might read stuff online where people say they can do it in half an hour, which personally I think is way too quick. And you might read people who take 4 or 5 hours to do it, and that's totally normal too. Obviously each song's different, each mix is different, but I think 1 to 2 hours is a good guideline. If you're doing it quicker than that, maybe you're not spending enough time on it, and if you're taking way longer than that, maybe you're overcooking it and maybe doing a bit too much to the mix. I've worked on tracks that needed very little processing and have been relatively easy to master, and I've worked on tracks that have taken me hours and hours and still needed multiple revisions to get the master sounding really good. Sometimes that's the mix, and sometimes that's just me. Sometimes I'm just tired or my ears are fatigued, and I can work and work and work and feel like I'm not getting anywhere, and then come back the next day feeling fresh and just nail something relatively quickly and feel like I've done a really good job on it. Another thing to consider is if you're doing an album or multiple tracks in the same session, generally the first 1 or 2 take longer, and once you've got an overall blueprint and you've got your plugins or your hardware dialed in the way you like it, generally it starts to move a bit faster from then because you've got a starting point. Even though you'll still be changing things, you've got an overall framework to start with. So next up, the process of actually working with an engineer, and there's only really one way to know how long that's going to take, and that is to ask them. For me personally, sometimes I can turn around a single the same week that you email me, and other times you might be waiting for a month if it's an album project and I've got lots on and lots of vinyl to cut. Some engineers offer a rush service where you can pay a little bit extra and get bumped up the queue. That's not something I personally do, but if a client gets in touch with me and they're in a real hurry, I tend to put them in touch with other mastering engineer friends that I trust. So the best advice I can give is to really plan the whole process of recording, mixing, mastering and releasing to allow yourself as much time as possible at each step along the way. It's a good idea to get in touch with a mastering engineer before you need the mastering, and that way they'll be able to plan it into their diary. They might be able to book a specific date in, or at least they'll know it's coming and be able to work with you to allow everything to run really smoothly. So I hope that's been useful. As always, leave any questions in the comments and feel free to get in touch through the website.